Welcome to the presentation on early stakeholder engagement. My name's Tracy Abel and I'll be presenting today. This is the fourth snapshot webinar in our series of 20, and we'll be focusing on the value of engaging with stakeholders early and avoiding costs and issues related to that. So what is a stakeholder? The project management body of knowledge defines a stakeholder as a person or entity that may or may not gain and benefit from the project, but can materially affect its outcome. We generally say it's someone with a vested interest in the project, someone who can impact it either negatively or positively. Why do we care about our stakeholders? What we tend to find is that stakeholders are one of the biggest causes of project change, or what we call scope creep, in many of our projects. This is incredibly costly and it can actually result in projects failing and being converted to entirely new projects to clean up the mess when it's all gone wrong. So KPMG has provided a little bit of information here. They state that the successful management of stakeholder interest ensures that stakeholders firstly have a voice so they can be heard within the project and project team, that they participate in the management process. So this is having regular meetings with stakeholders, seeking feedback from stakeholders, getting interim reviews done by stakeholders, and that they can contribute to the overall success of the project. And that tends to be related to their input into the development and planning and the definition of the deliverables of the project. Any of the following may be stakeholders. So whoever approves the development and use of a project is a stakeholder. Tends to be end users, clients and sponsors. Financial, whoever pays for the cost of a project. Resources, whoever provides resources, so labour, equipment, materials and facilities. So these can be your suppliers, they can be your team and your staff member, they can be contractors and so on. And users, whoever receives or utilises a project upon completion is also a stakeholder, and we call them end users of the project. There's a massively vast range of stakeholders. It could include your own internal organisational staff, your contractors, suppliers, clients, sponsors, your management, your board of directors and end users, as already discussed. And then you have to look more broadly. Think about community groups, about environmental groups and unions, financial institutions that your project is linked to. We all know in recent economic downturns that a lot of projects were cancelled partway through and cancelled before proceeding due to holds on loans and reduction of loan amounts. You also need to consider the neighbours and the local residents, workplace health and safety, legal representatives, the project manager and the team members themselves, any volunteer staff, the families of staff and contractors. So if someone's wife goes into labour or their mother passes away or their children are sick, what happens if you're relying on that one person to cover a specific role and suddenly they're not available? You also can consider media, particularly if you're seeking publicity for a project or you're trying to avoid negative publicity. There's also regulatory bodies and auditors. What you find is you can actually purchase and get for free large lists of potential stakeholders and then work through that list and work towards developing your own stakeholder summary. So here's a little sample project. The project is to hold a state school fair. Now consider all of these stakeholders. You've got administrative staff, parents, teachers, school management, grounds keepers, the people who provide the hire equipment, the event organizer, insurance companies, financial managers, stall holders, local property owners, the MC and the presenters, the local council, the students, the P&C association, caterers, community groups, and so on. I'm sure we could add many more to that list. So the point here is, imagine how many changes or issues could arise if these stakeholders ask for changes to be made to the project. So if each stakeholder even put in just one request, imagine how many changes or issues could arise on a project. So how do we avoid that? We have to consult with them. So firstly, step one is identifying our stakeholders. There's a number of ways to do it. The first one is to brainstorm, and we had a look at that quite a bit in our second webinar on the PERT chart and critical path. You can use the same techniques and brainstorm a list. Brainstorming, remember, works best in teams because you get that sharing of information. The next option there is to use a mind map, and there's a picture of a mind map there. So it's breaking up your stakeholders in who will be benefiting, who's involved in the project, who are regulating it, and so on, and then breaking each of those categories down further. You can use generic lists, which you can buy online, you can buy in books, you can download for free off the internet. You can look at past projects, what was a similar project you did and who were the stakeholders in there, and look at the lessons learned and see if they said anything about adding additional stakeholders. And you can also ask within your organisation, talk to experts within your own organisation and find out who they think should be included in your stakeholder list. So how will they impact upon the project? It's important to take this list and then analyse the degree of impact that each stakeholder may have and plan for this as early as possible. So in the Stephen Hartley book, Project Management Principles, Processes and Practice, there are 5 levels of impact. Level 1 is an extreme degree of impact. This would be your client, potential end user, the people who are thoroughly involved in your project. A high degree of impact, this may be contractors and suppliers. Moderate degree of impact may be local residents and other local groups that are involved. A slight degree of impact, maybe some neighbours, and no measured impact might be a shopping centre 3 streets away. So they're potentially a stakeholder because you'll be buying food from there, but their impact is very, very small on that particular project. So there's 5 levels: extreme, high, moderate, slight, and nil. So you need to communicate with each of these levels effectively to avoid many of the issues and delays that we've touched on already. And for that, you'll need a plan. And what you can develop is something called a stakeholder engagement plan. So you list your stakeholders, work out their contact details, ascertain the degree of impact, levels 1 to 5, work out how and when you are going to communicate with them, and then record what's actually occurred, the date contacted, the outcomes and actions. In a bit more detail. Firstly, stakeholders. So the stakeholders were identified in the previous slide through one of the 5 options indicated: brainstorming, mind mapping, generic lists, past projects, and within your organisation. The contact details. These should be recorded as accurately and with as much detail as possible. You should also indicate their preferred contact method. Some people might have an email address but only check it once a month. Or some people might never answer their mobile phone but might respond to text messages or emails extremely quickly. This can save a lot of messing around. And another reason that you record all of this information is that if you get taken off of the project and someone else takes it over, they've got all of this information at their fingertips and they don't need to waste months trying to catch up on it. From there, you ascertain the degree of impact, so extreme, high, moderate, slight, and nil. The higher the degree, the more urgent and rigorous the consultation should be. If someone is extreme or high, you need to consult and communicate with them as soon as possible and get all the information that you can because it will significantly affect your project. If it's slight or nil, you tend to leave these to later communication. And then a strategy. How and when will each stakeholder be communicated with? So extreme and high, early, and you'll put down actual dates that you would like them to be contacted, and you might organise your team to spend a couple of weeks going through contacting all of the stakeholders. Remembering here that you use their preferred contact method, their email over their phone or whatever that may be. The next 2 are post-contact issues. So the date contacted. You need to note down the date or multiple dates that they've been contacted, because if it was some time ago, you might need to go back and revisit that particular person. Touch base, see if there's been any changes made. So you may have locked in an agreement with a supplier 6 months ago, and you might need now to go back and confirm that those original prices and plans are still in place because there's been a delay on the project. And then outcomes and actions. Note down all the information that you can about that conversation or series of conversations with the stakeholder. That can then be used as the basis for your planning later on to try and avoid any issues that might occur because of those stakeholders. So stakeholders are essential to the positive outcome of most projects. An excellent resource for you to look up is the KPMG Leadership Series, and one of the documents is called Project Advisory, Stakeholder Management and Communication. It's fantastic, and that's the website there that you can find it at, but I'm sure if you do a search, you'll also be able to find it. It's done by KPMG New Zealand, and it's about stakeholder management and communication. An excellent read for anyone in the industry. One final thought. Two of the most common obstacles to recovering failed projects are getting stakeholders to accept the changes needed and poor communication and stakeholder engagement. So if projects are failing and you haven't been communicating well with your stakeholders, you're not going to suddenly get some magical improvements. But if you have been communicating all the way through your project, then they'll be on your side and they'll help get through the issues and help recover that project. So thank you for your time. Next week we'll be looking at establishing the project parameters, and this is putting together a basic project charter. Don't forget our conference in October the 26th to 28th, 3 days hands-on workshop. We've got 9 excellent guest speakers, and remember that after the conference you can do the Certificate 4 in Project Management Practice for free. Thanks for your time.